The moment Emma Carter watched her 5-year-old son's lips turn blue in a hospital parking lot, she knew she'd failed as a mother. $78. That's all it would take to save Noah's life, and she didn't have it. While other parents walked out clutching medicine and hope, Emma sat frozen on a snow-covered bench, holding her dying child, and wondering which bill she could ignore this month. Then a black SUV pulled up, and a stranger in a $1,000 coat sat down beside her. What happened next would shatter everything she thought she knew about survival, wealth, and the thin line between the two. If you want to see how one freezing January night changed two broken families forever, stay with me until the end, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Memorial Medical Center's emergency room had burned themselves into Emma Carter's retinas over the past 6 hours. She'd memorized every water stain on the ceiling tiles, counted every cough from the other waiting families, and held Noah against her chest so tightly her arms had gone numb twice. Her son's fever had spiked to 104 degrees that morning. Emma had called in sick to her shift at Ruby's roadside diner, which meant losing a day's pay she desperately needed, and taken 2 buses across Seattle to reach the hospital. Noah had whimpered the entire way, his small body radiating heat through his worn Power Rangers jacket. "Mama, my throat hurts," he'd whispered on the second bus. "I know, baby. We're almost there." But almost there had turned into an entire day of waiting. The ER was chaos. Flu season had hit Seattle hard, and Memorial Medical Center served the poorest neighborhoods in the city. Families packed every chair, children crying, parents arguing with exhausted nurses who couldn't see everyone fast enough. Emma had given the intake nurse their information, her hands shaking as she filled out paperwork, asking questions she couldn't answer. Insurance provider? None. Primary care physician? Couldn't afford one. Emergency contact? There was nobody. Just her and Noah against the world, same as it had been for 3 years. "We'll call you when a doctor is available," the nurse had said without looking up. So Emma had waited and waited. She'd watched wealthy families from other parts of the city get called back faster, had seen well-dressed parents with good insurance whisked through doors that stayed closed to people like her. Nobody said it out loud, but Emma understood the math. Poor meant slower. Poor meant sicker. Poor meant sitting in a waiting room watching your child suffer while people who mattered got help first. By hour 4, Noah had stopped complaining. That scared Emma more than the crying had. He'd gone quiet and limp, his eyes glazed, his breath coming in shallow gasps. Emma had carried him to the desk twice, begging them to see him, but the nurse just kept saying the same thing. "We're doing our best. You need to wait your turn." Finally, around 2 p.m., they'd called Noah's name. The doctor who examined him looked about 12 years old, probably a resident working a brutal shift. He'd barely glanced at Noah before scribbling on his clipboard. "Severe strep throat," he'd announced. "Possibly scarlet fever. I'm prescribing antibiotics. He needs to start them immediately." Relief had flooded through Emma's entire body. Medicine. They just needed medicine. She could handle that. "How much?" she'd asked. The young doctor had blinked at her. "The prescription? I'm not sure. You'll need to check with the pharmacy." He'd handed her the paper and disappeared before Emma could ask anything else. She'd carried Noah to the hospital pharmacy, her heart lighter than it had been in days. Her son would be okay. They'd get the medicine, he'd take it, the fever would break, and everything would go back to normal. Well, normal for them anyway, barely scraping by, but together. The pharmacist had been a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a kind smile. "Let me check what your insurance covers," she'd said, taking the prescription. "We don't have insurance," Emma had admitted quietly. The woman's smile had faded. She typed on her computer for a long moment, her expression shifting from neutral to concerned. "The medication is $78, she'd finally said. Emma's world had tilted sideways. 78? She'd heard her own voice crack. "Are you sure?" "That's the cash price, yes. Without insurance. Isn't there a generic version? Something cheaper?" The pharmacist had looked genuinely sorry. "This is the generic, honey. I know it's expensive, but your son really needs this. Untreated strep can lead to serious complications. Heart problems, kidney damage. I understand." Emma had cut her off because she couldn't bear to hear the list of terrible things that would happen if she failed her son. Again. She'd stared at the prescription in her hand like it was a winning lottery ticket she couldn't cash. $78. She had maybe $23 in her checking account. Her next paycheck from the diner wasn't due for another week, and even then, it wouldn't be enough to cover rent, utilities, and food, let alone an extra $78 for medicine. "Can I think about it?" Emma had asked, her voice barely a whisper. The pharmacist's pitying expression had made Emma want to disappear. "Of course. The prescription is valid for 30 days, but please, don't wait too long. Your son needs to start treatment soon." Emma had nodded and carried Noah back out into the cold January afternoon. Now she sat on a frozen metal bench outside the hospital entrance. Noah curled against her side and tried to figure out how to perform an impossible magic trick. Turn nothing into $78. She could skip paying the electric bill this month. Maybe they'd give her an extension, but that would mean sitting in the dark for weeks, and Noah needed light and warmth while he recovered. She could ask her landlord for more time on rent, but Mr. Kowalski had already been patient with her last month when she'd been short, and she was still behind. Push him too far and he'd evict them, and finding another apartment she could afford, if such a thing even existed, would be impossible. She could try to pick up extra shifts at the diner, but Ruby had been cutting everyone's hours because business was slow, and Emma couldn't work if Noah was this sick anyway. She'd need to miss several days taking care of him. There was no good answer. Every direction she turned led to disaster. "Mama?" Noah's weak voice pulled her back to the present. "Yeah, baby?" "Did we get my medicine?" Emma's throat closed. She couldn't speak. How did you tell your 5-year-old son that you couldn't afford to keep him alive? "We're figuring it out," she managed. Noah coughed, a wet, rattling sound that made Emma's chest ache. His fever had him shivering even though he was burning up, his small body confused and failing. "I'm cold," he whispered. Emma pulled him closer, wrapping her thin coat around both of them. It didn't help much. The coat had been cheap when she'd bought it 3 years ago at Goodwill, and Seattle winters were brutal. Wind cut through the worn fabric like it wasn't even there. She should take him home, get him into bed, try to bring down the fever with cool cloths and prayers. But Emma couldn't make herself stand up, because going home meant giving up. It meant accepting that she'd failed. The wind picked up, and Emma closed her eyes against the sting of cold and shame. Around her, the city moved forward like it always did, cars rushing past, people hurrying into the hospital or out of it. Everyone focused on their own emergencies, their own problems. Nobody looked at the woman and child freezing on the bench. Nobody cared. That was when Emma heard the car. It was a subtle sound at first, expensive and quiet, the kind of engine that purred instead of roared. She didn't open her eyes. Probably just another wealthy family arriving at the hospital, people who'd never understand what it felt like to choose between medicine and rent. But then the engine cut off right in front of her. Emma's eyes opened. A black luxury SUV sat at the curb, so clean it reflected the gray January sky like a mirror. The vehicle probably cost more than Emma would earn in 5 years. Maybe 10. The driver's door opened. Out stepped a man who looked like he'd walked off the cover of a business magazine. He was young, early 30s probably, with dark hair slightly messy from the wind and an expensive charcoal wool coat that fit him perfectly. Even from the bench, Emma could tell his shoes cost more than her entire month's rent. Everything about him screamed money, power, success. The kind of man who lived in a completely different universe than Emma Carter. He was talking on his phone, clearly in the middle of an important conversation, his voice low and authoritative even though Emma couldn't make out the words. He was probably here to visit some colleague or business partner, someone important enough to pull him away from whatever billionaires did on Tuesday afternoons. Emma looked away. People like him didn't see people like her. She'd learned that lesson years ago. But then something unexpected happened. The man stopped walking. Emma felt his gaze before she saw it, that particular weight of being noticed. She kept her eyes down, focused on Noah, willing the stranger to keep moving. "I'll call you back," the man said into his phone. No, Emma thought. Please just go inside. Footsteps approached the bench. Then, impossibly, the stranger sat down, right beside her. Emma's head snapped up in surprise. Up close, the man looked even more out of place. His coat probably cost $3,000. His watch was definitely Rolex. Everything about him was polished, expensive, tailored, except his eyes. Those were tired, deeply, bone-achingly tired in a way Emma recognized. "Sorry," the man said quietly. "I don't mean to intrude. I just—" He gestured toward Noah. "Your son. Is he okay?" Emma's defenses went up immediately. "We're fine," she said, her voice harder than she'd intended. The man didn't leave. He studied Noah for a moment, his expression shifting into something Emma couldn't quite read. Concern, maybe. Or recognition. "He's burning up," the man observed. "I know." Emma pulled Noah closer, protective. "We just saw a doctor." "Did they give you anything for him?" Emma's jaw tightened. "We're handling it." She wanted him to leave, needed him to leave, because sitting here next to someone who probably spent more on lunch than Emma earned in a week made the shame burn hotter than Noah's fever. But the stranger didn't move. Instead, he did something completely unexpected. He took off his expensive coat and held it out toward Emma. "Here," he said simply, "for your son." Emma stared at the offered coat like it was a snake. "I can't—" "Yes, you can." His voice was gentle but firm. "It's cold out here. Let me help." "I don't need your charity," Emma snapped, the words coming out sharper than she'd meant them. The man's expression didn't change. He didn't look offended or annoyed. Instead, he smiled, a small, sad smile that somehow made Emma's anger deflate. "I know that feeling," he said quietly. "Trust me, I do." There was something in his voice that made Emma pause, something real. Before she could protest again, Noah stirred against her chest and looked up at the stranger with fever-bright eyes. "Hi," Noah whispered. "I'm Noah. I'm 5. The man's entire face softened. "Hi, Noah. I'm Lucas." He glanced at Emma, then back at Noah. "How are you feeling, buddy?" "My throat hurts really bad," Noah admitted. "And I'm so cold, but Mama says I'm hot." Lucas nodded seriously, like Noah had said something profound. "That's because you have a fever. It tricks your body. Makes you feel cold when you're actually hot." He paused. "Did the doctor give you medicine to help?" Noah's face fell. "Mama can't buy it." Emma's entire world stopped. The shame that crashed through her in that moment was so intense she thought she might be sick. Her 5-year-old son had just told a complete stranger, a wealthy, powerful stranger, that his mother was too poor to buy him medicine. She wanted to run, wanted to grab Noah and disappear. But her body wouldn't move. Lucas turned to look at Emma, and she braced herself for the pity, the judgment, the disgusted look people always gave when they realized how far she'd fallen. Instead, she saw understanding. "How much?" Lucas asked. "It doesn't matter," Emma started. "How much?" he repeated, firmer this time. Emma's hands were shaking. $78. She waited for him to laugh or make some comment about how that was nothing. How could she not afford such a small amount? What kind of mother? "Okay," Lucas said simply. Then he pulled out his phone. "What are you doing?" Emma's voice came out panicked. "Calling the pharmacy." He was already dialing. "Memorial Medical Center has a pharmacy inside, right?" "You can't. I don't want." Emma couldn't form complete sentences. Lucas held up one hand, gentle but firm, and spoke into his phone. "Yes, this is Lucas Bennett. I need to speak with the pharmacy manager at Memorial Medical Center, please." Emma's brain short-circuited. Lucas Bennett? Even she knew that name. Lucas Bennett was a billionaire. The Lucas Bennett. He'd been on the cover of Forbes last year, youngest self-made billionaire in Seattle, founder of Bennett Healthcare Solutions, the massive private healthcare company that basically ran half the hospitals in Washington state. And he was sitting on a bench next to her, in the snow, calling in favors for her son. "Yes, I'll hold." Lucas glanced at Emma. "What's your son's name? Full name?" "Noah Carter," Emma whispered, too shocked to argue. Lucas repeated it into the phone, then listened for a moment. "Excellent. I need you to fill that prescription immediately and deliver it to the front entrance. I'll be waiting." A pause. "No, I don't need to come inside. Just bring it out." He ended the call and pocketed his phone like he'd just ordered coffee instead of saving a stranger's child. Emma couldn't breathe. "Why?" The word came out broken. Lucas looked at her, really looked at her, and Emma saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected. Pain. Old pain, the kind that never fully healed. Because, he said quietly, 3 years ago, I was sitting in a different hospital with my 8-year-old daughter, and I couldn't figure out how to tell her that her mother was dead. He glanced at Noah, then back to Emma. And in that moment, a nurse I'd never met before sat down next to me and held my hand while I fell apart. She didn't know who I was, didn't care. She just saw someone who needed help. Emma's vision blurred with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "About your wife." Lucas nodded, accepting the condolence. Her name was Sarah. She died of a brain aneurysm. One minute she was laughing at breakfast, the next she was gone. His voice was steady, but Emma heard the grief underneath. Being a single parent is the hardest thing I've ever done, and I have unlimited money, resources, help, and it's still almost impossible some days. He turned to face Emma fully. "I can't imagine doing it the way you are," he said, and there was no pity in his voice, only respect. Working multiple jobs, no support, barely surviving, and still showing up for your son every single day. Lucas shook his head. "That takes more strength than anything I've ever had to do." Emma couldn't speak. Nobody had ever said anything like that to her before. People judged her, pitied her, looked down on her, but nobody had ever called her strong. "The medicine will be here in a few minutes," Lucas continued, "and I'm not trying to insult you or make you feel small by paying for it. I'm just—" He paused, searching for words. "I'm just passing forward what someone did for me when I needed it most." Noah coughed again, and Lucas's expression shifted into immediate concern. "Can I?" He gestured toward Noah, asking permission. Emma didn't know what he wanted to do, but she nodded. Gently, carefully, Lucas reached out and pressed the back of his hand against Noah's forehead, the way parents do. "You're burning up, buddy," he murmured. "But the medicine is coming, okay? You're going to feel better real soon." Noah, with the fearless trust only children possess, leaned into Lucas's touch. "Are you a doctor?" he asked. Lucas smiled. "No, I run hospitals, but I'm not a doctor. I have a daughter, though. She's 8. Her name is Sophie." "Is she nice?" "Most of the time." Lucas's smile widened. "She can be bossy, though. Likes to be in charge." Noah giggled weakly, and the sound made Emma's heart crack open. When was the last time her son had laughed? A hospital employee emerged from the entrance carrying a small white bag. She spotted Lucas immediately. Probably everyone who worked at Memorial knew who he was, and hurried over. "Mr. Bennett, here's the prescription for Noah Carter. I've included children's fever reducer as well. No charge." "Thank you, Jennifer." Lucas took the bag, and the woman disappeared back inside. He handed it to Emma. She took it with trembling hands, staring at the simple white pharmacy bag like it contained liquid gold instead of antibiotics. "Thank you," she whispered, and the words felt pathetically inadequate. Lucas stood, brushing snow off his expensive pants. "Take care of him," he said, then more quietly, "and take care of yourself too." He started to walk away, back toward his SUV, back to his world of money and power, and things Emma would never understand. But Emma's voice stopped him. "Wait." Lucas turned. Emma struggled to her feet, still holding Noah, the pharmacy bag clutched against her chest. "I don't—" Her voice broke. "I don't know how to repay you." Lucas's expression softened. "You don't have to repay anything, just—" He hesitated. "When Noah's better and you're back on your feet, maybe pass it forward too. Help someone else who needs it. That's how it works." Emma nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Lucas gave Noah a small wave. "Feel better, buddy." Then he was gone, climbing into his SUV and driving away into the gray Seattle afternoon. Emma stood on the sidewalk holding her son and a bag of medicine she couldn't have afforded in 1,000 years, and tried to understand what had just happened. A billionaire had helped her, not because he wanted something, not because it made him look good, but because someone had once helped him. "Mama?" Noah's weak voice brought her back. "Yeah, baby? That man was nice." Emma looked down at her son, her fierce, brave, beautiful son who deserved so much more than she could give him. "Yeah," she whispered. "He really was." She carried Noah to the bus stop, her mind reeling. On the ride home, she gave Noah his first dose of antibiotics, watching him swallow the pills with water from her thermos. Already, just having the medicine felt like hope, like maybe things would be okay. But Emma couldn't stop thinking about what Lucas had said, about being a single parent, about strength, about passing forward kindness. She'd spent 3 years believing she was alone in the world, that nobody cared whether she survived or disappeared. She'd built walls around herself so high that she'd forgotten what it felt like when someone knocked on them. Lucas Bennett, a man who had everything money could buy, had knocked. And somehow, in that brief conversation on a freezing bench, he'd seen Emma Carter. Really seen her, not as a charity case or a statistic or a failure, but as another parent fighting to protect their child against impossible odds. That night, after Noah fell asleep with his fever already starting to break, Emma sat at her small kitchen table and cried. Not from despair this time, from relief, from exhaustion, from the overwhelming realization that maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't as cold as she'd believed it to be. And somewhere across the city, in a mansion Emma would never see, Lucas Bennett sat in his daughter's bedroom watching Sophie sleep and thought about the woman he'd met outside the hospital. He thought about her fierce protectiveness, her pride even in the face of complete desperation, the way she'd looked at her son like he was the only thing in the world worth fighting for. Lucas understood that feeling. He'd lived it every day since Sarah died. But seeing Emma today had reminded him of something he'd almost forgotten, that everyone was fighting battles nobody else could see. And sometimes the smallest act of kindness could change everything. He didn't know it yet, but he'd see Emma Carter again. And when he did, it would change both their lives in ways neither of them could possibly imagine. 3 days after Noah's fever broke, Emma's phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers usually meant debt collectors or scam calls, neither of which she had energy for. But something made her pick up on the fourth ring. Hello? Ms. Carter? This is Jennifer Hollis calling from Bennett Healthcare Foundation. Emma's stomach dropped. She'd been waiting for this call, the one where they told her there'd been a mistake, that she needed to pay back the medicine, that nothing in life was actually free. I'm calling to follow up on Noah's treatment, the woman continued, her voice professional but warm. How is he feeling? Emma blinked. He's better. The antibiotics worked. I'm so glad to hear that. Papers rustled in the background. Ms. Carter, Mr. Bennett asked me to reach out to you about our family assistance program. Would you have time to come in and discuss some resources that might be helpful? I can't afford. Everything through our foundation is free, Jennifer interrupted gently. We provide healthcare navigation, job training resources, housing assistance, childcare support, no strings attached. Emma sat down on her second-hand couch, suddenly dizzy. Why? The question came out suspicious, guarded. Jennifer's voice softened. Because Mr. Bennett believes healthcare is a right, not a privilege. And because parents shouldn't have to choose between keeping their children alive and keeping a roof over their heads. Those words hit Emma square in the chest. I work full-time, she said, defensive. I'm not looking for a handout. I know you do, Ms. Carter. This isn't about handouts. It's about making sure families have support when they need it. A pause. Would you be willing to just come in and talk? No commitment, just a conversation. Emma thought about saying no, about hanging up and pretending this call had never happened. But she thought about Noah, still weak and recovering, about the stack of bills on her counter, about the electricity company's final notice threatening disconnection. When? She asked quietly. Would Thursday at 10 work? I can arrange transportation if you need it. I can take the bus. The address is 1500 Union Street, 4th floor. Just ask for me at reception. Emma wrote it down on the back of an unopened envelope. After she hung up, she sat staring at the address for a long time, trying to quiet the voice in her head that insisted this was too good to be true. Nothing came free. There was always a cost. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray, typical Seattle winter weather that made Emma's thin coat feel useless. She'd left Noah with her neighbor Mrs. Patterson, a retired teacher who occasionally watched him when Emma was desperate. Mrs. Patterson refused payment, which made Emma feel guilty, but she had no other options. The bus ride downtown took 40 minutes. Emma spent it staring out the rain-streaked window, watching the city transform from run-down neighborhoods to gleaming high-rises. The Bennett Healthcare Foundation occupied the fourth floor of a modern building in the financial district. Emma felt completely out of place the moment she walked through the glass doors. Everyone around her wore expensive suits and moved with purpose. She was wearing her best jeans, which had a stain on the knee she'd tried to scrub out, and a sweater with a small hole near the hem. The reception desk was staffed by a young woman with perfect makeup and a genuine smile. "I'm here to see Jennifer Hollis," Emma said, her voice smaller than she'd intended. "Of course." "Your name?" "Emma Carter." The receptionist typed something, then smiled wider. "Ms. Carter, yes, Jennifer is expecting you. Please have a seat and she'll be right out." Emma sat in one of the modern chairs, feeling like she might break something just by existing in this space. The waiting area had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, abstract art on the walls, fresh flowers on side tables. Everything screamed money. She was about to bolt when a woman emerged from a hallway. "Emma? I'm Jennifer." Jennifer Hollis was maybe 40, dressed professionally, but not intimidatingly so, with kind eyes and an easy smile. She extended her hand and Emma shook it, hoping her palm wasn't too sweaty. "Thank you for coming. Let's go somewhere more comfortable." She led Emma down a hallway past offices where people worked at computers and talked on phones, conducting business Emma couldn't begin to understand. They entered a small conference room with a round table and more windows. "Coffee? Water?" Jennifer offered. "I'm okay." They sat, and Jennifer pulled out a folder. "First, I want to make sure Noah is doing well. Mr. Bennett was concerned about him." "He's better," Emma said, back to his normal self, running around, making noise. Jennifer smiled. "That's wonderful. Kids are resilient." She opened the folder. "So let me explain what we do here. The Bennett Healthcare Foundation was created to provide support to families who fall through the cracks of the traditional healthcare system. We're not a charity in the typical sense. We're more of a navigation service. We help people access resources that already exist but are difficult to find or qualify for." Emma nodded, not quite understanding. "For example," Jennifer continued, "we can help you apply for state health insurance programs that you might qualify for but didn't know existed. We have partnerships with hospitals to provide reduced-cost care. We offer job training programs and connections to employers who work with our foundation. We have childcare resources, housing assistance connections, financial literacy classes." It sounded impossible. Too good, like a trap waiting to snap shut. "What do I have to do?" Emma asked. "To get this help?" Jennifer met her eyes. "Fill out some paperwork. Attend an intake meeting. Show up." "That's it?" "That's it." Emma's defenses went up. "Why? Why would anyone just give this away?" Jennifer leaned back in her chair, her expression understanding. "Can I be honest with you, Emma? Please." Mr. Bennett's wife died without warning 3 years ago. One day she was healthy, the next she was gone, and even with all his money and resources and connections, he couldn't save her. Jennifer's voice was gentle. That experience changed him, made him realize that healthcare isn't really about money. It's about access, timing, knowledge, luck. So he created this foundation to try to level that playing field a little bit. Emma's throat tightened. "He saw your son outside that hospital," Jennifer continued, "and he saw his daughter. He saw himself. And he realized he could help, so he did." She slid a packet of papers across the table. "We're not asking you to be grateful or owe anybody anything. We're just offering resources if you want them." Emma stared at the papers without picking them up. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "Of course. Take the packet home. Look it over. My number's on the first page. Call me if you have questions or if you decide you want to move forward." Emma took the papers with shaking hands. As Jennifer walked her back to the elevator, Emma forced herself to ask the question burning in her mind. Does he know I'm here?" Jennifer smiled. "He's the one who asked me to call you." The elevator doors opened and Emma stepped inside, clutching the folder against her chest like a shield. On the bus ride home, she finally opened it. Inside were applications for state health insurance, information about job training programs, a list of childcare resources, contact information for housing advocates. Everything was organized, clear, designed to actually help rather than to confuse. At the bottom was a handwritten note on expensive cardstock. "Ms. Carter, everyone deserves a safety net. Please let us help you build one. Lucas Bennett. Emma read it 3 times, then carefully folded it and put it in her wallet. That night, after putting Noah to bed, she sat at her kitchen table and started filling out the applications. 2 weeks later, Noah was enrolled in a state health insurance program Emma hadn't known existed. The coverage was basic but real. Doctor visits, prescriptions, emergency care. Things she'd been gambling with every day suddenly had a safety net underneath them. Jennifer called weekly to check in, but the calls never felt invasive. More like someone actually cared whether Emma drowned or survived. Then, on a rainy February morning, Jennifer asked if Emma would be willing to come back to the foundation office. "There's someone who'd like to meet you," she said carefully, "but only if you're comfortable with it." Emma knew who it was before she asked. "Mr. Bennett?" "Yes, he's been following your case, in a non-creepy way, I promise, and he'd like to talk to you about something, but there's absolutely no pressure. You can say no." Emma thought about it for maybe 3 seconds. When? The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday at 2 p.m. Emma arranged for Mrs. Patterson to pick Noah up from kindergarten, then took the bus downtown wearing her lease-stained pair of jeans and a sweater she'd found at Goodwill that actually looked decent. This time, the foundation office felt slightly less intimidating. The receptionist recognized her and smiled warmly. "Miss Carter, good to see you again. Mr. Bennett is expecting you. 4th door on the left." Emma's heart hammered as she walked down the hallway. Through the glass walls, she could see him before she reached the door, Lucas Bennett, standing by the window of his office, talking on his phone. He looked different than he had that day at the hospital. More polished, more billionaire, less human. She almost turned around, but he saw her through the glass and held up one finger, 1 minute, with an apologetic smile. Emma waited, her hands twisting together. Lucas ended his call and opened the door himself. "Miss Carter, thank you for coming." "Emma?" she corrected automatically. "Please." His smile widened slightly. "Emma, come in." His office was large, but not obnoxiously so. One wall was entirely windows overlooking the city. The others held bookshelves, framed photos, a few pieces of art that probably cost more than Emma's car, if she'd had a car. But what caught her attention was the photo on his desk. A young girl with dark hair and Lucas's eyes, grinning at the camera with missing front teeth. "Your daughter?" Emma asked. Lucas glanced at the photo, his expression softening. "Sophie. That was taken last year. She's 8 now. She's beautiful." "She's a terror," he said, but his voice was full of affection. "Stubborn, bossy, thinks she runs the world. Sounds like my Noah. Except he's only 5, so the stubbornness is just getting started." Lucas laughed, and the sound was unexpectedly genuine. "Please sit." He gestured to the chairs across from his desk. Emma sat, feeling awkward and out of place. Lucas didn't sit behind his desk. That would have created too much distance. Instead, he took the chair beside Emma, turning it to face her. "How's Noah doing?" he asked. "Good. Really good. The health insurance you helped us get, it's made a huge difference." "I'm glad." Lucas paused. "Emma, I asked you here because I have a proposition, and I want you to feel completely free to say no." Here it comes, Emma thought. The catch. "Jennifer tells me you've been spending time in our waiting rooms when you come in for meetings," Lucas continued. "She says other parents gravitate toward you, that you help them with paperwork, calm down their kids, make them feel less alone." Emma shrugged. I remember what it felt like, being lost and scared. If I can help someone feel less of that, I do." Lucas nodded slowly. "That's exactly why I want to offer you a job." Emma's brain short-circuited. "A job?" "In our patient advocacy department. You'd work with families who are navigating the healthcare system, helping them understand their options, filling out applications, connecting them with resources. Basically what you've already been doing, but officially." Emma stared at him. "I don't have a degree. I didn't even finish community college. I'm a waitress." "You're a single mother who survived 3 years of hell through sheer determination," Lucas corrected. "You know what it's like to be on the other side of that desk. You know what it feels like when the system fails you. That's not something you can learn in school." "I wouldn't know what I'm doing." "We'd train you. Jennifer would be your supervisor. You'd start part-time, 25 hours a week, with full benefits and childcare assistance." He named a salary that made Emma's head spin. It was more than she made working 40-plus hours at the diner. Why? The question came out harsh, suspicious. Why would you hire someone with no qualifications? Lucas leaned forward slightly, his expression serious. Because 6 months ago, a single father came to one of our clinics with his 3-year-old son who had leukemia. The father was undocumented, spoke limited English, and was terrified of being deported if he asked for help. Our staff tried to help him, but there was a language barrier, a cultural barrier, a fear barrier. He paused. Then one of our janitors, a woman from the same country as this father, sat down with him and talked to him in his language, helped him understand the system, held his hand through the process. That little boy is in treatment now because someone who understood his father's fear was there to help. Lucas looked directly at Emma. Our staff is well-trained and compassionate, but none of them have been where you've been. None of them know what it's like to sit outside a hospital and choose between medicine and rent. You do. And that matters. Emma couldn't speak. You don't have to answer now, Lucas said. Think about it. Talk to Jennifer. Tour the department, meet the team. See if it feels right. Can I ask you something? Emma's voice came out shaky. Of course. That day at the hospital. Did you know you were going to do all this? Offer me a job? Change my life? Lucas shook his head. I just saw a kid who needed medicine and a mother who needed help. Everything after that happened because you showed up. You did the work, filled out the applications, came to meetings. You built this. You paid for the medicine. I wrote a check. You raised a child alone for 5 years while working yourself to exhaustion. Those aren't the same thing. Emma felt tears threatening and blinked them back hard. I want to say yes, she admitted. But I'm scared. Of what? That I'll fail. That I'll prove everyone right who said I was useless. That you'll regret giving me a chance. Lucas was quiet for a moment. Then he stood and walked to his desk, pulling something from a drawer. He handed it to Emma. It was a photo, old, faded, showing a young Lucas in cheap clothes standing next to an older woman in a diner uniform. My mother, Lucas said quietly. She raised me alone. Worked 2 jobs her entire life. Never had anything, but she made sure I had everything. He took the photo back, looking at it with an expression Emma recognized, love mixed with grief. She died my sophomore year of college. Heart attack. She was only 48. I'm sorry. Everyone told her she was wasting her money putting me through school, that I should just get a job, help pay bills. But she believed I could do more. She saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. He put the photo back in his drawer. I see that same something in you, Emma. Whatever it is that makes some people keep fighting when everyone else would quit. You have it. Your son sees it. I see it. Lucas met her eyes. The question is whether you're willing to see it too. Emma's hands were shaking. When would I start? Lucas smiled. Whenever you're ready. She took a breath. 2 weeks? I need to give notice at the diner. 2 weeks is perfect. They shook hands, and Emma felt the entire trajectory of her life shift underneath her feet. As she rode the bus home that afternoon, Seattle looked different through the rain-streaked windows. Less gray, less hostile. More like possibility. When she picked up Noah from Mrs. Patterson's apartment, her son took one look at her face and grinned. You look happy, Mama. Emma swept him into a hug, breathing in the little boy's smell of him, shampoo and playground dirt and home. I got a new job, baby. Doing what? Helping people. Families like us. Noah considered this seriously. That's good. You're good at helping. Out of the mouths of 5-year-olds. That night, Emma called Ruby and gave her notice. Her boss was disappointed, but not surprised. You deserve better than this place anyway, hun, Ruby said gruffly. Don't be a stranger. Emma promised she wouldn't, but they both knew she probably would be. That was how life worked. You moved forward and left pieces of yourself behind. Her first day at the Bennett Healthcare Foundation felt like showing up to school in the wrong uniform. Everyone around her had degrees, credentials, experience. Emma had a GED and 3 years of slinging hash at a roadside diner. But Jennifer assigned her to shadow a caseworker named Maria, and within an hour, Emma realized something important. She understood these families in a way her educated colleagues couldn't. When a scared mother broke down crying over a bill she couldn't pay, Emma didn't offer platitudes. She sat down beside her and said, I know, I've been there. Let's figure this out together. When a father snapped at her out of frustration and fear, Emma didn't take it personally. She recognized the anger for what it was, terror dressed up as hostility. By the end of her first week, she'd helped 6 families navigate insurance applications, connected 2 mothers to job training programs, and talked a suicidal father off a metaphorical ledge by simply listening to him for an hour without judgment. On Friday afternoon, Lucas stopped by her cubicle. "How's it going?" Emma looked up from the paperwork she'd been drowning in. "It's hard," she admitted, "but good hard." "Does that make sense?" Lucas smiled. "Perfect sense." He paused. "There's a family event next Saturday. Nothing formal, just a park gathering for foundation families and staff. Sophie will be there. I thought maybe you and Noah might want to come." Emma hesitated. "Is it required?" "Not at all. Just an invitation." "Then yes. Noah would love it." The following Saturday was surprisingly sunny for February. Emma dressed Noah in his best jeans and the new jacket she'd been able to buy with her first paycheck, a thought that still made her want to cry, and took the bus to Volunteer Park. The gathering was smaller than she'd expected. Maybe 40 people total, families sitting on blankets, kids running around, staff members manning a grill, casual, normal. Jennifer spotted them and waved them over. "Emma, you came, and this must be Noah." Noah, usually shy around strangers, seemed energized by all the kids running around. "Can I play?" he asked Emma. "Stay where I can see you," she said, and he was off. Emma stood awkwardly, holding a plate of food she wasn't hungry for, watching Noah chase after other kids with the boundless energy only 5-year-olds possessed. "He looks healthy." She turned to find Lucas beside her, casual in jeans and a sweater, holding a paper cup of lemonade. He looked more like the man from the hospital bench than the billionaire from the office. "Thanks to you," Emma said. "Thanks to antibiotics and a decent immune system," Lucas corrected. He nodded toward the playground where a dark-haired girl was organizing the other kids into some kind of game. "That's Sophie, the bossy one on the slide." Emma watched the little girl direct traffic like a tiny general. "She looks like you." Poor kid. Lucas's tone was light, but Emma heard the love underneath. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching their children play. "Can I ask you something?" Emma said finally. "Sure." "Why do you still show up to these things? You could just write checks and let other people do the work." Lucas took a sip of his lemonade, considering. "Because Sophie needs to understand that money isn't what makes someone valuable," he said quietly. "Her mom died when she was 5. She barely remembers her, and I'm terrified that she'll grow up thinking wealth equals worth." He glanced at Emma. "I want her to see people like you. People who fight for their kids with nothing but sheer determination. That's the lesson I want her to learn." Emma's throat tightened. Before she could respond, Noah came running over, dragging Sophie by the hand. "Mama, this is Sophie. She's 8 and she says I can be on her team." Sophie looked at Emma with serious dark eyes. "Is it okay if Noah plays with us? We're playing rescue mission." "Of course," Emma said. "Excellent." Sophie grabbed Noah's hand again. "Come on. You can be the person we're rescuing." They ran off together, and Lucas laughed. "He's been recruited. There's no escape now." Emma smiled, watching her son playing with other kids who didn't care that his clothes were secondhand or that he'd been sick a month ago or that his mother barely kept them afloat. He was just Noah. And for the first time in 5 years, Emma let herself believe that maybe that was enough. The friendship between Sophie and Noah happened fast, the way childhood friendships do. Intense and uncomplicated and completely oblivious to the adult world around them. After the park gathering, Sophie asked Lucas if Noah could come over to play. Lucas mentioned it to Emma at work the following Monday, casual and careful, like he was trying not to make it weird. "You don't have to say yes," he added quickly. "I know it might feel strange given everything, but Sophie hasn't stopped talking about him for 2 days, and I figured I'd ask." Emma's first instinct was to say no, to keep that boundary firmly in place between her boss who'd saved her life and her actual life. But then she thought about Noah, who had so few friends because they'd moved 3 times in 2 years chasing cheaper rent, and she heard herself saying yes. That Saturday, Lucas picked them up himself. Emma had expected a driver maybe, or for him to send a car service. Instead, He showed up in the black SUV from that first day, Sophie bouncing in the back seat. "Hi, Noah," Sophie waved frantically. "I got the new Mario Kart game and Dad says we can play for 2 whole hours before homework." "You don't have homework," Lucas said mildly. "You're 8. "I might have homework, you don't know." Noah climbed into the back seat grinning, and Emma got in the passenger seat feeling completely out of her depth. Lucas's house was in Madison Park, which Emma should have expected but still wasn't prepared for. The SUV pulled through a gate, up a curved driveway, and stopped in front of a modern house that looked like something from an architecture magazine. All windows and clean lines and money. Emma's stomach twisted. This was a mistake. Noah would break something. She'd say something stupid. Lucas would realize how completely different their worlds were, and this fragile new normal would shatter. But then Noah and Sophie were already racing toward the front door, and Lucas was looking at Emma with an expression that was almost apologetic. "I know it's a lot," he said quietly. "Sarah picked this place. I would have been fine with something smaller." "It's beautiful," Emma managed. "It's empty." Lucas said it so softly, she almost missed it. Inside, the house was immaculate and cold. Expensive furniture, art on the walls, everything perfectly arranged and completely impersonal, like a showroom instead of a home, except for Sophie's chaos. The moment they walked in, Emma could see the 8-year-old's territory expanding from her bedroom down the hallway, stuffed animals on the stairs, art supplies on the dining room table, a half-built Lego castle in the living room. "Sophie, shoes!" Lucas called. "I know," came the distant reply, followed by the sound of 2 pairs of small feet thundering upstairs. Lucas smiled tiredly. "Can I get you coffee? Tea? Something stronger?" Emma laughed despite her nerves. "Coffee's good." The kitchen was chef quality, all granite and stainless steel, and Lucas moved through it with surprising comfort. Not like someone who had staff do everything, but like someone who actually cooked. "You want the truth?" he said, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. "Sophie's the only reason this place feels like a home at all. After Sarah died, I thought about selling it. But Sophie grew up here. She has memories of her mom here. I couldn't take that away from her." Emma accepted the mug, cradling it between her hands. "How do you do it?" she asked. "Work, raise her alone, run a foundation, be on 1,000,000 boards?" She stopped. "Sorry, that's too personal." "No, it's fair." Lucas leaned against the counter. "Honestly, I don't do it well. I have a nanny who picks Sophie up from school most days. I miss half her school events because of meetings. Last month I forgot it was her birthday until my assistant reminded me the morning of." The guilt in his voice was familiar. "I forgot Noah's parent-teacher conference last year," Emma admitted. "Completely forgot, just didn't show up. His teacher called me at work and I felt like the worst mother alive." Lucas met her eyes. "You're not. You're not a bad father either." Something passed between them in that moment. An understanding. A recognition that they were both drowning in different oceans but fighting the same tide. Upstairs, Sophie shrieked with laughter, followed by Noah's giggle. "They sound happy," Emma observed. "They do." Lucas took a sip of his coffee. "Sophie doesn't have many friends. Other kids don't really know how to act around her since Sarah died. They either avoid her or treat her like she's broken. Noah doesn't know she's supposed to be different." Exactly. They stood in the enormous kitchen, drinking coffee and listening to their children play. And for the first time since meeting Lucas Bennett, Emma felt like they were just 2 single parents trying not to screw up their kids too badly. The weeks after that first play date fell into an unexpected rhythm. Sophie and Noah became inseparable at foundation events. Lucas and Emma started having coffee after work sometimes, talking about nothing important. Bad TV shows, the Seattle weather, whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Emma kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. For Lucas to remember she was an employee, a charity case, someone who didn't belong in his world. But it never happened. Instead, something stranger occurred. She started to see Lucas as just Lucas. Not the billionaire, not her boss, not the man who'd saved her son's life. Just a tired single father who loved his daughter fiercely and didn't know what to do with his grief. And Lucas started seeing Emma too. Really seeing her. He saw how she stayed late at the foundation helping families even after her shift ended. How she remembered every child's name, every parent's story. how she fought insurance companies with the fury of someone who'd been denied too many times herself. One evening in late April, Lucas stopped by Emma's cubicle as she was packing up. "You hungry?" Emma looked up, surprised. "What?" "I'm starving. You're probably starving. The kids are at my house with my nanny watching a movie. Want to grab dinner? Nothing fancy," he added quickly. "There's a Thai place around the corner that's pretty good." Emma should have said no, should have kept that professional boundary intact. "Sure," she said instead. The restaurant was small and loud and decidedly unfancy. They sat in a corner booth and ordered too much food and talked about everything except work. Lucas told her about growing up poor in Tacoma, about his mother working herself to death to put him through school, about building his company from nothing and nearly losing everything twice before it took off. Emma told him about Noah's father, a guy she'd dated for 6 months who'd disappeared the moment she told him she was pregnant, about working 3 jobs while pregnant because she had no choice, about the apartment building that caught fire when Noah was 2, forcing them to start over with nothing. "I don't usually tell people that stuff," Emma said, pushing pad thai around her plate. "People hear single mother and they make assumptions. That I'm irresponsible. That I made bad choices." "Did you?" Lucas asked. Emma considered it. "Yeah, probably, but I'd make them again because they gave me Noah." Lucas smiled. "Sophie was unplanned too. Sarah and I weren't even married yet. We were both terrified." His expression shifted, remembering. "But the moment she was born, nothing else mattered." "Do you ever—" Emma stopped. "What?" "Do you ever get angry at her? At Sarah, I mean, for leaving you alone with this?" Most people would have been offended by the question. Lucas just looked relieved someone had finally asked it. "Every single day," he admitted quietly. "I know it's not fair. She didn't choose to die. But yeah, I'm furious at her for leaving me to figure this out alone, for leaving Sophie without a mother, for dying and taking all the easy parts of my life with her." Emma nodded. She understood that anger, felt it toward Noah's father constantly. "Does that make me a terrible person?" Lucas asked. "Makes you human." They split the check, Emma insisted, and walked back toward the foundation building where they'd both parked. The Seattle evening was cool and damp, threatening rain. At Emma's beat-up Honda Civic, Lucas hesitated. "This was nice," he said. "We should do it again sometime." "Yeah," Emma agreed. "We should." She drove home feeling off balance in a way she couldn't name, like something had shifted that she wasn't ready to examine too closely. The next morning at work, Jennifer stopped by Emma's desk with a strange expression. "Can we talk? My office?" Emma followed her, running through everything she might have done wrong. Had she screwed up a case? Missed a deadline? Said something inappropriate at dinner with Lucas? Jennifer closed the door and turned to face her. "Are you and Lucas dating?" Emma's brain short-circuited. "What? No. Why would you? No." "Because Karen from accounting saw you two at dinner last night and she's already told half the office." Emma's stomach dropped. "It wasn't a date. We just grabbed food. As friends." Jennifer held up her hands. "I'm not accusing you of anything, but I need you to understand something." She sat on the edge of her desk. "Lucas Bennett is one of the most eligible bachelors in Seattle. The press watches him constantly, and if they catch wind that he's involved with an employee, especially one who used to be a program beneficiary, it will turn into a circus." "We're not involved," Emma said firmly. "I believe you, but you need to be careful. For your sake, and for his." Jennifer's expression softened. "I like you, Emma. You're good at this job, better than people who've been doing it for years, but you're also vulnerable in ways they're not. If this turns into something, even just friendship, people will assume you slept your way into this position. They'll question everything you've accomplished." Emma felt sick. "I didn't ask for any of this." "I know, but that won't matter." Jennifer stood. "Just think about it, okay? I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you all the information." Emma went back to her desk and stared at her computer screen without seeing it. She'd been stupid, naive. Of course, dinner with Lucas Bennett meant something to other people, even if it had felt simple and easy in the moment. That evening, when Lucas asked if she wanted to grab coffee, Emma made an excuse about needing to get home to Noah. The next day, she ate lunch at her desk instead of joining him and Jennifer in the break room. By the end of the week, Lucas cornered her in the parking garage. Did I do something wrong? Emma kept her eyes on her car keys. No. Then why are you avoiding me? I'm not Emma. His voice was gentle but firm. Talk to me. She finally looked at him. People are talking about us having dinner, about what it means. Understanding crossed Lucas's face, followed by frustration. Let them talk. Easy for you to say. You're the billionaire boss. I'm the employee who used to be on assistance. People will assume I'm using you, or you're taking advantage of me, or... Emma stopped, overwhelmed. Lucas was quiet for a long moment. You're right, he said finally. I wasn't thinking about how it would look. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. Yes, I do. Lucas ran a hand through his hair. I got comfortable. Forgot that my life is under a microscope in ways yours isn't. That was selfish. Emma's chest ached. I don't want to lose this. The friendship, I mean. Sophie and Noah and you and me just talking about normal stuff. But I also can't have people thinking I'm only here because of you. Lucas nodded slowly. So what do we do? I don't know. They stood in the dim parking garage, two people who'd somehow become friends despite every reason they shouldn't have, trying to figure out how to exist in a world that wanted to make them either a scandal or nothing at all. We keep it professional at work, Lucas said finally. No more lunches together, no more casual office conversations. We're boss and employee here. That's it. It was the right answer, the smart answer. Emma hated it. Okay, she agreed. But outside of work, Lucas met her eyes. The kids are friends. That's legitimate. So if Sophie wants Noah over to play, or if they want to do something together, that's about them, not us. Emma saw what he was doing, creating a loophole, a way to stay in each other's lives without feeding the gossip machine. That could work, she said carefully. And maybe sometimes the adults supervising those play dates end up talking while the kids play. That wouldn't be weird, right? Just two parents making small talk. Despite everything, Emma smiled. No, that wouldn't be weird. Lucas smiled back, and something warm unfurled in Emma's chest that she absolutely could not afford to feel. She drove home that night trying to convince herself that this was fine, that friendship was enough, that whatever else she might be starting to feel for Lucas Bennett was just gratitude twisted up with loneliness and proximity. But when Noah asked if he could see Sophie again soon, and Emma heard the hope in his voice, she knew it was already too late to protect herself. They were tangled up in each other's lives now. Her and Lucas, Sophie and Noah. And untangling would hurt all of them. The summer arrived with unusual sunshine, and the four of them fell into a pattern. Once a week, sometimes twice, Sophie and Noah would have a play date. Sometimes at Lucas's house, sometimes at Emma's tiny apartment that Lucas pretended wasn't a stark reminder of the gap between their worlds. One Saturday in July, they took the kids to the beach at Golden Gardens. Noah had never been. Emma had never had time or money for beach trips, and his excitement was contagious. Sophie immediately took charge, showing Noah how to find the best shells, how to build sandcastles that wouldn't collapse, how to avoid the coldest water. She's so good with him, Emma observed, watching from the blanket where she and Lucas had set up camp. She loves having someone to boss around, Lucas said. But his voice was fond. Noah loves having someone pay attention to him. Emma paused. He asks about you sometimes. About whether you're his friend too, or just Sophie's dad. Lucas glanced at her. What do you tell him? That you're both, if that's okay. It's more than okay. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the kids play at the water's edge. Other families surrounded them, normal people doing normal things. For a moment, Emma let herself pretend they were normal too, just another family spending a Saturday at the beach. Emma? Lucas's voice pulled her back. Yeah? Can I ask you something personal? She tensed slightly. Okay. Do you ever think about dating again? Meeting someone? It wasn't the question she'd expected. Emma considered lying, deflecting. But she and Lucas had gotten past surface-level conversations months ago. Sometimes, she admitted, but honestly, I don't have the energy. Between work and Noah and just surviving, there's nothing left. Plus, most guys hear single mother and run for the hills. Lucas made a disgusted sound. Their loss. What about you? Emma turned the question back on him. I'm sure you have women lining up. Women who want Lucas Bennett, the billionaire, sure. Women who want Lucas, the guy who can't cook, who falls asleep during movies, who sometimes hides in his office because his daughter's emotions are too big and he doesn't know how to help her? He shook his head. That guy doesn't get a lot of offers. I doubt that. It's true. Lucas watched Sophie chase Noah through the shallow waves. After Sarah died, people tried to set me up constantly. Business associates, daughters, friends of friends. Every single one of them treated Sophie like an inconvenience, like she was something to work around rather than the center of my world. Emma understood that completely. Noah is my world too. I know. Lucas looked at her. That's why... He stopped. Why what? Nothing. Never mind. But Emma had seen his expression shift into something she couldn't read, something that made her pulse quicken and her defenses slam up simultaneously. Before she could push, Sophie came running over, dripping wet and grinning. Dad, Noah found a crab. Come see. Lucas let himself be dragged away, and Emma sat on the blanket trying to slow her racing heart. That night, after they dropped off Emma and Noah at the apartment, after she'd put her exhausted son to bed, Emma stood in her kitchen and let herself think the thought she'd been avoiding for months. She was falling for Lucas Bennett. Not the billionaire, not the boss, not the man who'd saved her son. Just Lucas. The person who'd somehow become her best friend, who made her laugh, who understood her in ways nobody else ever had. And it was the most dangerous thing she could possibly do. Because Lucas lived in a world of mansions and private schools and business deals worth millions. Emma lived in a world of overdue bills and secondhand clothes and survival. They could be friends, could let their kids be friends, but anything more would be a disaster. She knew that. She just wished knowing it made her feel it any less. Across town, Lucas sat in Sophie's room watching her sleep and had the exact same realization. Somewhere between that frozen hospital bench and now, Emma Carter had stopped being a stranger he'd helped and started being someone essential. He looked forward to their playdates more than Sophie did, found excuses to text Emma about random things, caught himself watching the door at work, waiting for her to arrive. And it terrified him. Because the last time he'd loved someone, she'd died and nearly destroyed him. Because Emma deserved someone without all his baggage and complications. Because the power imbalance between billionaire boss and employee was impossible to navigate ethically, but mostly because he knew with absolute certainty that if he let himself fall completely, there would be no coming back. Lucas kissed Sophie's forehead and went to his own room where Sarah's photo still sat on the nightstand. I don't know what to do, he told the image of his dead wife. I don't know how to do this again. Sarah's frozen smile offered no answers. August arrived with smoke from distant wildfires, turning the Seattle sky orange and keeping everyone indoors. Emma worked her cases from the foundation office and tried not to think about how often she found excuses to walk past Lucas's office. Then Jennifer called her in again. I have an opportunity for you, she said, closing the door. How would you feel about leading a new program? Emma blinked. What kind of program? We want to expand our outreach to underserved communities, not just helping families who find us, but actively going into neighborhoods and connecting with people before they reach crisis point. Jennifer pulled out a folder. You'd design the program, hire a team, run it. It would be a promotion, significant raise, your own office. Emma's head spun. Why me? I've only been here 6 months. Because you know these communities, you lived this life, and because every family you've worked with raves about you. Jennifer smiled. You're good at this, Emma. Really good. It's time we made it official. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Jennifer slid the folder across. Proposal is due in 3 weeks. Present it to the board, including Lucas. If they approve, the job is yours. Emma took the folder home and stayed up until 2 a.m. reading through it, her mind racing with possibilities. This was real. A career, not just a job, a future she'd never imagined. But it also meant presenting to Lucas and the board, proving herself to people who might always see her as charity case first, professional second. The next morning, she found Lucas alone in the break room. Did Jennifer talk to you? She asked without preamble. He looked up from his coffee. About the new program? Yeah. Was it your idea? Lucas set down his mug. It was a committee decision. But you had input. I recommended you for it, yes. He met her eyes. You're the best person for the job, Emma. That's not bias, it's fact. People will say you're giving me special treatment. Let them. Lucas's voice was firm. You've earned this. If you want it, it's yours. But only if you want it. Emma thought about Noah, about the future she could build for him with a salary like this, about making a real difference instead of just surviving. I want it, she said. Lucas smiled. Then go earn it. The 3 weeks Emma spent preparing her proposal were the most intense of her life. She interviewed families, researched programs in other cities, built budgets and timelines and strategies until her brain hurt. Lucas stayed carefully distant at work, professional and appropriate. But their text conversations continued, late-night messages about nothing important that somehow felt like everything. The night before her board presentation, Emma's phone buzzed at 11 p.m. Lucas, you're going to be great tomorrow. Emma, how do you know I'm not already asleep? Lucas, because I know you, you're still working. Emma looked at the proposal spread across her kitchen table and smiled. Emma, maybe. Lucas, go to sleep, Emma. You know this stuff inside and out. Trust yourself. Emma, easy for you to say, you've done 1 million presentations. Lucas, and I still throw up before every single one. Emma, the Lucas Bennett throws up before presentations? Lucas, why do you think I always have mints in my office? Emma laughed out loud in her empty apartment. Emma, thank you for believing I can do this. Lucas, you don't need me to believe in you, but for what it's worth, I do. Emma fell asleep with her phone in her hand and woke up ready to fight for the future she wanted. The boardroom was nothing like Emma had imagined. She'd pictured something intimidating, long table, stern faces, mahogany and leather. Instead, it was a modern conference room with glass walls and downtown Seattle spreading out behind them like a promise or a threat. 12 people sat around the table. Emma recognized some from foundation events. Others were strangers in expensive suits who probably had more money in their wallets than Emma had in her entire bank account. Lucas sat at the head of the table, and when Emma walked in, he didn't smile or acknowledge her any differently than he would any other presenter. Pure professional. It should have reassured her. Instead, it made her feel completely alone. Jennifer gave her an encouraging nod from the side of the room. Emma set up her laptop with shaking hands, pulled up her presentation, and took a breath. Good morning. I'm Emma Carter, and I'm here to talk about why we're failing the families who need us most. That got their attention. She clicked to the first slide, a map of Seattle with red dots marking every family the foundation had helped in the past year. They clustered in wealthy neighborhoods, areas with good transit, places where people had the resources to know help existed and how to access it. This is who we reach, Emma said. Families who can get to our office, who speak English, who have internet access to find us, who aren't afraid that asking for help will get them deported or reported to child services. She clicked to the next slide. Another map, this time showing poverty rates across the city. The areas with the highest need had almost no red dots. This is who we're missing, and it's not because they don't need help, it's because we're not going to them. For the next 20 minutes, Emma laid out her proposal. Mobile outreach units that would go directly into underserved neighborhoods, partnerships with community centers, churches, schools, multilingual staff, evening and weekend hours for people who couldn't take time off work, trust building rather than just service delivery. She talked about the mother she'd met last month who'd let her son's asthma get life-threatening because she was afraid that going to the hospital would trigger an investigation into her immigration status. About the father who worked 3 jobs and couldn't access assistance programs because they all required daytime appointments he couldn't make. These families aren't lazy or looking for handouts, Emma said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. They're invisible, and they're dying from it. She clicked to her final slide. Budget projections, timeline, expected outcomes. This program will cost $3.2 million over 2 years. I know that's significant, but the cost of doing nothing is families falling through cracks we pretend don't exist. Emma closed her laptop and looked at the faces around the table. I grew up in those invisible neighborhoods. I was one of those invisible families. And if someone hadn't seen me when I needed it most, she glanced at Lucas for just a second. My son and I wouldn't be here. So yeah, this is personal, but it's also right, and I'm asking you to fund it. Silence filled the room. Then a man in his 60s, Robert Chen, one of the foundation's largest donors, leaned forward. You said you grew up in these neighborhoods, past tense. What makes you think you can still connect with these communities now that you're on this side of the table? Emma had expected this question, had prepared for it. Because I still live in those neighborhoods, Mr. Chen. My apartment is in Rainier Valley. My son goes to public school where half the kids are on free lunch. I shop at the food bank twice a month when money's tight. She met his eyes. I'm not on this side of anything. I'm still there. I just also happen to work here now. Another board member, a woman whose name Emma couldn't remember, spoke up. The budget seems aggressive. How do you justify these salary projections for outreach workers? Because if we pay poverty wages, we'll get people who've never experienced poverty, Emma said. I want to hire community members, people who grew up in these neighborhoods, who speak the languages, who understand the culture. Those people deserve to be paid what they're worth, not what charities usually pay. The questions came fast after that. Emma answered each one, her confidence growing as she realized she knew this material better than anyone in the room. She'd lived it. She'd researched it. She'd built this proposal from the ground up. Lucas stayed quiet through the entire presentation, his face unreadable. Finally, Robert Chen looked at Lucas. What's your position on this, Lucas? Lucas met Emma's eyes for the first time since she'd started presenting. I think Emma has identified a massive gap in our service delivery. I think her proposed solution is innovative and feasible. And I think she's the only person in this organization who could actually pull it off. He paused. I'm recommending we approve full funding. Emma's heart stopped. I second that, said another board member. The vote was quick. 10 in favor, 2 abstaining. No one voted against. Emma stood in the boardroom, still holding her laptop, trying to process what had just happened. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. Congratulations, Ms. Carter, Robert Chen said, standing to shake her hand. I look forward to seeing what you build. The board members filtered out, several stopping to congratulate her. Jennifer gave her a quick hug, and then it was just Emma and Lucas in the glass-walled room. You were incredible, Lucas said quietly. Emma's hands were still shaking. I thought I was going to throw up. I did throw up, right before I came in here. That surprised a laugh out of her. Seriously? I told you, every presentation. Lucas smiled. But you didn't need to be nervous. You know this work better than anyone. Emma set down her laptop. Thank you for recommending funding, for believing in this. I meant what I said. You're the only person who could do this. Lucas's expression shifted into something more serious. But Emma, this is going to be hard. You'll be managing a team, dealing with community politics, answering to the board. The pressure is going to be intense. I can handle pressure. I know you can. Just... He hesitated. Don't forget to take care of yourself, too. You're allowed to ask for help. Is that your way of saying your door is always open? My door is always open. Lucas said it like a promise. Emma wanted to hug him, wanted to share this victory with him the way friends did, the way she would have if he were anyone else. But they were in a glass-walled boardroom where anyone walking by could see them, and Lucas was her boss, and she was an employee who'd just gotten a major promotion that people would absolutely attribute to their relationship if they weren't careful. So instead, she just smiled. I should go call Noah, tell him the good news. Give him a high five from me and Sophie. Emma gathered her things and left, and only when she was alone in the elevator did she let herself feel the full weight of what she'd accomplished. She'd stood in front of billionaires and business leaders and told them they were failing, and they'd listened. A year ago, she'd been sitting on a frozen bench wondering if her son would survive the night. Now she was running a $3 million program. The elevator doors opened, and Emma walked out into the afternoon sunlight, pulled out her phone, and called Noah's school. Can you tell Noah Carter that his mom just became a director? She told the secretary. And that we're celebrating with ice cream tonight. Over the next 3 months, Emma built her team from scratch. She hired 7 outreach workers, all of them from the communities they'd be serving, a former refugee from Somalia, a single mother from the Philippines, a guy who'd been homeless for 2 years before getting back on his feet, people who understood struggle not as an abstract concept, but as lived reality. Lucas stayed carefully hands-off, letting Emma run the program her way. But she felt his support in small ways. Extra budget when she needed it, quick responses to her emails, the way he defended her decisions when board members questioned them. Their friendship continued in the margins. Text messages late at night, Saturday playdates with the kids that always seemed to run long, moments in the foundation hallways where their eyes would meet and entire conversations would happen in silence. Emma told herself it was enough. Most days she almost believed it. Then October came, and with it, disaster. Emma was in a community center in White Center, meeting with families about the mobile outreach program, when Jennifer called. "Turn on the news," Jennifer said without preamble. "Channel 4, now." Emma excused herself, stepped outside, and pulled up the news on her phone. Her stomach dropped. The headline read, "Bennett Healthcare Foundation under fire. Misuse of funds alleged." The reporter was standing outside the foundation building, microphone in hand, serious expression in place. Sources within the Bennett Healthcare Foundation claim that millions of dollars in charitable donations have been diverted to for-profit ventures within Bennett's corporate empire. Additionally, allegations have surfaced regarding preferential treatment for certain families with personal connections to Lucas Bennett himself. Emma's blood went cold. The report cut to an interview with someone Emma didn't recognize, a former board member, apparently, who'd resigned 6 months ago. "Lucas Bennett runs that foundation like his personal piggy bank," the man said. "He puts his friends in high-paying positions regardless of qualifications. He funnels money into programs that benefit his company's bottom line rather than the families who actually need help." "Can you give us specific examples?" the reporter pressed. "Well, there's the recent hire of Emma Carter, woman with no degree, no experience, now running a $3 million program. And coincidentally, Bennett paid for her son's medical care personally right before hiring her. You tell me what that looks like." Emma thought she might be sick right there on the sidewalk. Her phone exploded with texts. Jennifer, coworkers, even people she barely knew, all asking if she was okay, if she'd seen the news, if she knew this was coming. She ignored all of them and called Lucas. He answered on the first ring. "Emma? Is it true?" Her voice came out harsh. "Any of it?" "No, none of it. This is Richard Voss, a board member I forced out for trying to cut all our charitable programs. He's been threatening to retaliate for months." Lucas sounded furious but controlled. "My lawyers are already on it. They mentioned me specifically, Lucas. Said you gave me this job because you paid for Noah's medicine. I gave you this job because you earned it." "But you did pay for Noah's medicine. That part is true. So how does it look?" Emma was pacing now, her mind racing. How does it look that a billionaire paid for some random woman's kid's health care and then gave her a 6-figure job? Lucas was quiet for a moment. "It looks bad," he admitted. "But Emma, you know the truth. Everyone who works with you knows the truth. You've helped hundreds of families in 6 months. Your program is already making a difference. None of that matters if people think I slept my way into this position." "No one thinks that." "Everyone thinks that," Emma nearly shouted it. "I knew this would happen. I told you people would talk. But I thought if I just worked hard enough, if I proved myself enough, it wouldn't matter. But it does matter. It always matters." She heard Lucas take a breath. "What do you want me to do?" he asked quietly. Emma leaned against the community center wall, watching cars pass on the street. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that hers was imploding. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I just know that I spent my whole life being invisible, and now I'm front-page news for all the wrong reasons. We'll fix this. I promise." "You can't promise that." "Emma, I have to go. I have families waiting." She hung up before he could respond and stood there trying to pull herself together. A year ago, she would have run, would have quit, disappeared, started over somewhere new where nobody knew her story. But she'd built something here, helped people, made a difference. She wasn't running. Emma went back inside the community center, smiled at the waiting families, and got back to work. The news cycle was brutal. For 3 days, every local station ran stories about the allegations. Conservative outlets painted Lucas as a corrupt billionaire using charity as a tax shelter. Liberal outlets criticized him for not doing enough to help poor families. Everyone had an opinion about Emma, most of them terrible. The foundation's phones rang constantly, donors demanding answers. Families worried their assistance would be cut. Reporters looking for quotes. Emma stopped reading the comments on news articles after the first dozen called her a gold digger, a welfare queen. A woman using her kid to trap a billionaire. Lucas released a statement through his lawyers denying all allegations and threatening legal action against Voss for defamation. But statements didn't stop the 24-hour news cycle. On day 4, Emma was called into an emergency board meeting. She walked into that same glass-walled conference room expecting to be fired. Had a resignation letter already written in her bag, just in case they didn't get there first. The board members looked grim. Lucas looked exhausted. Robert Chen spoke first. "Ms. Carter, thank you for coming. I know this has been a difficult week." "Yes, sir. We've spent considerable time investigating these allegations, reviewing financial records, interviewing staff, examining hiring practices." He paused. "I want to be clear. We found no evidence of any wrongdoing, not by Lucas, not by you, not by anyone on staff." Emma's shoulders dropped slightly. "However," Chen continued, "perception matters. And right now, the public perception is damaging our ability to serve families. Donors are pulling funding. Politicians are calling for investigations. We're losing ground." Here it comes, Emma thought. "So we need to address this head on," Chen said, "which is why we're asking you to speak publicly about your experience with the foundation." Emma blinked. "What?" "A press conference," another board member explained. "You tell your story, how you found the foundation, what the assistance meant to you, how you came to work here. Let people see you as a person, not a character in Richard Voss's revenge fantasy." Emma looked at Lucas, who'd been silent through the whole exchange. "I won't force you to do this," Lucas said quietly. "It's your choice. But I think people need to hear from you directly." "They'll tear me apart," Emma said. "Probably," Lucas agreed. "But they're already doing that. At least this way you get to fight back." Emma thought about every family she'd helped over the past months. The mothers who'd cried in her office. The fathers who'd finally found hope. The kids who'd gotten health care they desperately needed. She thought about Noah, who deserved a mother who stood up for herself. "Okay," she said, "I'll do it." The press conference was scheduled for the following Monday. Emma spent the weekend preparing, working with the foundation's PR team to craft her statement. But Sunday night, sitting at her kitchen table with Noah asleep in the next room, she threw out everything they'd written and started over. Because the PR version sounded polished and perfect and nothing like her. And if she was going to do this, she was going to do it as herself. Monday morning, Emma put on her best outfit, still from Target, still not particularly fancy, and met Lucas at the foundation building. A dozen cameras were set up in the lobby. Reporters filled the seats. Emma recognized some of them from the news coverage that had been destroying her reputation for a week. Lucas touched her elbow briefly. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." She walked to the podium alone. The cameras started flashing immediately. Emma blinked against the lights, her heart hammering, her prepared statement clutched in her hand. Then she set the paper down and just talked. "My name is Emma Carter. A year ago, I was sitting outside Memorial Medical Center with my 5-year-old son who had a fever of 104 degrees. The doctor had given us a prescription for antibiotics that cost $78. I had maybe $20 in my bank account and rent was already overdue. So I sat there trying to figure out which bill I could skip, which meal we could go without, how I could turn nothing into enough to keep my kid alive." The room had gone completely silent. "I'm not telling you this for pity," Emma continued. "I'm telling you because that's the reality for millions of families in this country. We work full-time, we love our kids, we do everything right, and it still isn't enough." She gripped the podium. That day, Lucas Bennett sat down on the bench next to me and asked what was wrong. I didn't want his help, didn't want his charity, but he didn't care what I wanted. He cared that a kid was sick and needed medicine, so he paid for it. No strings, no conditions. Just one parent helping another parent because it was the right thing to do. Emma looked directly at the cameras. "Now people are saying I traded sex for a job, that I used my son to manipulate a billionaire, that I'm unqualified and corrupt and only here because of who I know." Her voice hardened. "Those people don't know anything about me. They don't know that I worked 3 jobs while pregnant and still ended up homeless. They don't know that I chose between eating and keeping the lights on more times than I can count. They don't know that I've spent every single day of the past 6 years fighting to give my son a better life than I had." She took a breath. "When Lucas Bennett offered me a job, I said no at first, because I knew people would assume exactly what they're assuming now. But he told me that lived experience mattered, that understanding poverty wasn't something you could learn in a classroom. And he was right. Emma pulled out a folder from beside the podium. In the 6 months I've been running the community outreach program, we've helped 347 families access health care they couldn't afford. We've connected 82 people to job training programs. We've prevented 12 evictions. We've literally saved lives. She held up the folder. These are letters from families we've helped. I'm not going to read them all, but here's one. Dear Emma, I don't know if you remember me. My daughter had pneumonia and I was too scared to take her to the hospital because I'm undocumented. You came to my apartment, helped me find a clinic that wouldn't report me, and stayed with me the whole time. My daughter is healthy now because of you. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Emma's voice cracked slightly, but she pushed through. I am qualified for this job. Not because of a degree or a resume, because I've been these families. I've lived their fear and I know how to help because I remember what it felt like when someone finally helped me. She looked around the room. So if you want to write stories about how I don't belong here, go ahead. But while you're writing them, I'll be doing the actual work, helping actual families, making an actual difference. Emma straightened. And that's all I have to say. She walked away from the podium without taking questions, Lucas following close behind. They made it to his office before Emma's legs gave out. She sat heavily in one of his chairs, shaking. You were amazing, Lucas said. I just ended my career. You just saved it. Emma's phone started buzzing, text after text. Jennifer, Maria, other coworkers. She opened the first one and her breath caught. It was from a number she didn't recognize. I saw your press conference. I'm a single mother struggling to afford my son's insulin. Can you help? Another text came in. Then another. Then her email started dinging. All of them from families asking for help. Emma? Lucas was watching her with concern. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. They heard me, she whispered. People actually heard me. Within an hour, the foundation's phones were ringing off the hook, not with angry donors or demanding reporters, with families asking for help. By that evening, the narrative had shifted. News outlets were running follow-up stories featuring families Emma had helped. Social media was flooded with people sharing their own stories of healthcare struggles. The foundation's donation page crashed from traffic, and Richard Voss's allegations were buried under an avalanche of people defending Emma Carter and the work she was doing. Emma sat in her apartment that night, Noah asleep beside her on the couch, and watched the news coverage with something like disbelief. She'd told the truth, just stood up and told her truth, and somehow, impossibly, it had been enough. Her phone buzzed. Lucas. You still awake? Emma smiled. Yeah. Can I tell you something? Sure. I've given hundreds of speeches, testified before Congress, done interviews on national television, and I've never been as proud of anything I've said as I was watching you today. Emma's throat tightened. Thank you for believing in me, she texted back, even when I didn't believe in myself. Always. Emma looked at her sleeping son, at the tiny apartment that didn't feel quite so small anymore, at the life she'd somehow built from absolutely nothing. And for the first time in 6 years, she let herself believe that maybe she deserved it. The weeks after the press conference blurred together in a chaos of work that Emma had never experienced before. Her program exploded beyond anything she'd planned for. Families she'd never met showed up at community centers asking for her by name. Volunteers flooded the foundation offering to help. Donations poured in so fast the finance department couldn't process them quick enough. Emma hired 3 additional outreach workers just to handle the demand, then had to hire 2 more the following month. She was working 60-hour weeks and still couldn't keep up. One Thursday in late November, she fell asleep at her desk and woke up 2 hours later with her cheek stuck to a grant application and Jennifer standing over her with coffee. You look like hell, Jennifer said, not unkindly. Emma peeled her face off the paper. Thanks. When's the last time you took a day off? Emma had to think about it. July, maybe. Jennifer set down the coffee and pulled up a chair. You know what happens to people who work themselves to death in nonprofits? They get promoted? They burn out spectacularly, and then all the families depending on them are screwed. Jennifer's voice was firm. Take the weekend off. Actually off. No emails, no phone calls. Just you and Noah doing something fun. I have 3 applications due Monday. Hey, and they'll still be here Tuesday when you come back rested. Jennifer stood. That's not a suggestion, Emma. That's your supervisor telling you to take care of yourself before you crash. Emma wanted to argue, but she was too tired. That night, she picked Noah up from after-school care and found him quieter than usual. You okay, baby? She asked as they rode the bus home. Noah shrugged, staring out the window. Noah? Are you going to die like Sophie's mom? Emma's heart stopped. What? No. Why would you think that? Because you're never home anymore. And you look tired all the time. And Sophie said her mom was tired a lot before she died. Emma pulled the stop cord and got them off at the next stop, even though it wasn't their usual one. She sat on a bench and pulled Noah into her lap, even though he was really getting too big for it. Listen to me, she said, tilting his chin up to look at her. I'm not dying. I'm just working too much. But that's going to change, okay? Promise? Promise. Emma hugged him tight. This weekend, it's just you and me. Whatever you want to do. Noah's face brightened. Can we go to the Space Needle? Sophie went and she said it's really cool. Emma thought about the cost and immediately pushed the thought away. Some things mattered more than money. Yeah, she said. We can do that. Saturday morning arrived with rare November sunshine. Emma and Noah took the bus downtown, and Emma tried not to wince when she paid for their Space Needle tickets. Worth it, she told herself, watching Noah's face light up. They were standing in line for the elevator when Emma heard a familiar voice. Noah! Sophie came running over, Lucas following at a more measured pace. He was dressed casually, jeans and a sweater, and looked as surprised as Emma felt. What are you guys doing here? Emma asked. Sophie's been begging for weeks, Lucas said. You? Same. Noah wanted to see what Sophie was talking about. The kids were already chattering excitedly, oblivious to the adults' awkwardness. Can they come up with us? Sophie asked, looking at her dad with pleading eyes. Lucas glanced at Emma. If Emma doesn't mind. Please, Mama? Noah added his own pleading to Sophie's. Emma should have said no. Should have kept the boundary between their work lives and personal lives clear. But Noah was looking at her with such hope, and she was tired of always saying no. Sure, she said. The four of them rode the elevator up together, the kids pressed against the windows, exclaiming over the view as Seattle spread out below them. At the top, Sophie grabbed Noah's hand and dragged him toward the outdoor observation deck. Stay where we can see you, Lucas called after them. He and Emma followed at a distance, keeping the kids in sight, but giving them space. Jennifer told me she ordered you to take the weekend off, Lucas said. News travels fast. She's worried about you, so am I. Emma leaned against the railing, looking out at Puget Sound. I'm fine. Emma. I am. I'm just adjusting to the workload. Lucas was quiet for a moment. You know you can delegate, right? That's why you have a team. My team is as overwhelmed as I am. Then hire more people. We're already over budget for staffing, so ask for a bigger budget. Lucas turned to face her. You built something incredible, but you can't run it all yourself. Nobody can. Emma knew he was right. She just didn't know how to let go. I keep thinking that if I work hard enough, prove myself enough, then maybe people will stop questioning whether I deserve to be here, she admitted. Lucas's expression softened. Emma, you already proved yourself. The press conference, the families you've helped, the program you've built, you've proven yourself 100 times over. The only person still questioning it is you. Before Emma could respond, Sophie and Noah came running back. Dad, they have a cafe up here. Can we get hot chocolate? Lucas looked at Emma. You want to grab some? My treat. Emma started to refuse, then remembered Jennifer's words about taking care of herself, and Noah's worry that she was working herself to death. Yeah, she said. That sounds good. They found a table by the windows, the kids buzzing with excitement about the view, about Thanksgiving coming up, about everything and nothing. Emma sipped her hot chocolate and watched Lucas help Noah read the informational placard about Mount Rainier, patient and kind, and something twisted in her chest. This felt like family, not work, not obligation, not a billionaire helping someone he pitied, just family. And that terrified her, because Emma had learned young that family was the thing you lost. Her parents had kicked her out at 18. Noah's father had abandoned them. Every stability she'd ever found had eventually crumbled. Getting attached to this, to Lucas, to Sophie, to the life they'd accidentally built together, felt like setting herself up for the worst loss yet. "You okay?" Lucas asked quietly, while the kids were distracted. Emma realized she'd gone silent. "Yeah, just thinking." About? About how I'm falling in love with you and I don't know how to stop, Emma thought. About how Noah's right. This place is pretty cool, she said instead. Lucas smiled, but Emma could tell he knew she was lying. They stayed at the Space Needle until the kids got hungry. Then Lucas suggested lunch at a burger place nearby. Emma tried to pay her share, but Lucas waved her off. "My idea, my treat." Over burgers and fries, Sophie announced, "Thanksgiving is in 2 weeks. Are you guys doing anything?" Noah looked at Emma hopefully. Emma's heart sank. Thanksgiving. She'd been so buried in work, she'd completely forgotten about it. "Probably just staying home," she said, "having a quiet day." "You should come to our house," Sophie said immediately. "We have so much food and Dad always makes too much turkey anyway." "Sophie," Lucas started. "Please?" Sophie looked at her father. "It's boring with just us, and Noah's my best friend." Lucas looked at Emma, his expression careful. "You're welcome to join us, if you want. No pressure." Emma wanted to say yes so badly it hurt. Wanted to spend the holiday with people who felt like home, instead of alone in her apartment pretending everything was fine. But she also knew that blurring these lines further was dangerous. "Let me think about it," she said finally. Sophie looked disappointed, but nodded. That night, after putting Noah to bed, Emma sat in her dark living room and let herself think about the things she'd been avoiding for months. She was in love with Lucas Bennett, not just attracted to him, not just grateful, not just fond of him as a friend. Actually, completely, stupidly in love. And she had no idea what to do about it. Her phone buzzed, a text from Lucas. "Sorry if Sophie put you on the spot today. You don't have to come for Thanksgiving." Emma stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "She didn't, but I don't want to intrude on your family holiday." The response came quickly. "You wouldn't be intruding. We'd love to have you." Emma's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could feel herself standing at a crossroads. Say yes and step further into this relationship that was already too complicated. Say no and maintain the safe distance that was slowly killing her. "Can I ask you something?" she typed. "Anything." "Why do you keep inviting me into your life? Really?" The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, a response came. "Because I'm tired of pretending we're just friends." Emma's breath caught. Before she could figure out how to respond, another message arrived. "Sorry, that was too much. Forget I said it." Emma's heart was racing. She should absolutely, definitely forget he said it. Should shut this down before it went any further. She called him instead. Lucas answered on the first ring. "Emma? Don't apologize," she cut him off. "I'm tired of pretending too." Silence on the other end. "But I don't know what to do about it," Emma continued. "Because you're my boss and I'm your employee and there's a power imbalance and people already think I slept my way into this job. And if there's actually something here, it will be complicated," Lucas finished. "Impossibly complicated." "Yeah." They sat in silence, connected by phone but miles apart physically, both trying to navigate something neither of them knew how to handle. "What do we do?" Emma asked finally. Lucas took a breath. "I think we should talk about this in person, not over the phone. Can you come over tomorrow? I'll have my nanny take the kids to a movie or something. Just us, talking honestly about what this is and what it means." Emma knew this was the moment. She could say no, keep things professional, protect herself from potential disaster. Or she could say yes and see where this impossible thing might lead. "Okay," she whispered. "Tomorrow." Sunday afternoon, Emma drove to Lucas's house in her beat-up Honda, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. She'd dropped Noah at Mrs. Patterson's, claiming she had work to do, which was technically true if emotional labor counted as work. Lucas answered the door himself, looking as nervous as Emma felt. "Sophie's at the movies with Karen," he said. "We have a couple of hours." They sat in his living room, the one Emma had been in dozens of times for play dates. But that suddenly felt completely different. Lucas spoke first. "I need you to know that your job is not contingent on this conversation. Whatever happens here, whatever you decide, your position at the foundation is secure. I'll put that in writing if you want. That's not... Emma stopped. Okay, yeah, actually, that helps. Lucas pulled out his phone and typed something, then showed her the screen. An email to Jennifer and the board, dated and time-stamped, stating that Emma's employment was secure regardless of any personal relationship between them, and that he was recusing himself from any employment decisions regarding her going forward. He hit send while Emma watched. There, he said. Now can we actually talk about this? Emma nodded, her throat tight. Lucas leaned forward, his expression serious. I have feelings for you, Emma. Real ones. Not gratitude, not pity, not some savior complex. When I'm with you, I feel like myself for the first time since Sarah died. You make me laugh. You challenge me. You see me as just Lucas, not the billionaire or the boss or the guy with all the answers. Emma's heart was hammering. But, Lucas continued, I also know that my feelings don't matter if you don't feel the same way. Or if you do feel something but the complications are too much. I need you to be honest with me about what you want. Emma looked at him, really looked at him. At the vulnerability in his eyes, the fear of rejection, the hope he was trying to hide. I'm terrified, she admitted, of getting hurt, of hurting Noah, of people judging me even more than they already do, of losing my job if this goes wrong, of losing you if it doesn't work. All of that makes sense, Lucas said quietly. But I also... Emma's voice cracked. I can't stop thinking about you. Can't stop wanting to text you every stupid thought I have. Can't stop looking for you at work. Can't stop wanting this to be real. Lucas's expression shifted into something that made Emma's chest ache. So what do we do? He asked. Emma thought about it. About Noah and Sophie, who were already inseparable. About the foundation and her career and everything she'd built. About the press and the judgment and all the ways this could blow up in their faces. And then she thought about sitting on a frozen bench a year ago, convinced she was completely alone in the world. We try, she said, carefully, slowly. We keep it private until we're sure. We protect the kids. We navigate the work stuff with complete transparency. And if it doesn't work, we handle it like adults who care about each other, Lucas finished. Emma nodded. Lucas moved closer, hesitant. Can I kiss you? Emma's answer was to close the distance between them herself. The kiss was gentle and tentative and absolutely terrifying and perfect all at once. When they pulled apart, Lucas was smiling. So, he said, about Thanksgiving. Emma laughed. Yes, we'll come to Thanksgiving. They spent the next hour talking through logistics, boundaries, how to navigate this new territory without destroying everything they'd built. It wasn't romantic or passionate. It was practical and honest and exactly what they both needed. When Emma left that evening, nothing had fundamentally changed. They weren't going public, weren't telling anyone at work, weren't making any grand declarations. But everything felt different anyway. Thanksgiving arrived cold and gray, typical Seattle weather. Emma and Noah showed up at Lucas's house at noon with a store-bought pumpkin pie because Emma had never learned to bake and wasn't about to start now. Sophie answered the door in an apron covered in flour, grinning. We're making rolls, come help! The four of them spent the afternoon cooking together, or more accurately, Lucas cooked while Emma and the kids made a mess attempting to help. It was chaotic and loud, and Noah got flour everywhere, and Sophie accidentally dropped an entire stick of butter on the floor. It was the best Thanksgiving Emma had ever had. Over dinner, Sophie announced, I'm thankful for Noah because he's my best friend, and he doesn't treat me different just because my mom died. Noah, not to be outdone, said, I'm thankful for Sophie because she shares her toys and her dad bought us medicine when we were sick. Lucas met Emma's eyes across the table, his expression warm. I'm thankful for second chances, he said. Emma smiled. I'm thankful for people who see you when you're invisible. After dinner, while the kids watched a movie in the other room, Emma and Lucas cleaned up the kitchen together. It felt domestic and normal, and like something they'd been doing for years instead of months. Can I tell you something? Lucas said, drying a plate. Sure. That day at the hospital, when I saw you on that bench with Noah, I almost didn't stop. I had a meeting. I was already late. Every logical reason to just keep walking. He set down the plate. But something made me stop. And I keep thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't. Emma turned to face him. Someone else would have helped eventually. Maybe, but I wouldn't have met you, And my life would be... Lucas paused. Emptier. Emma stepped closer to him. I spent so long being angry at the world for being unfair, angry at Noah's dad for leaving, angry at myself for not being enough. And then you sat down on that bench and made me feel seen for the first time in years. She took his hand. I don't know what this is going to look like long term, Emma continued. We're still figuring it out, but I know that I want to try. Lucas pulled her into a hug, and Emma let herself lean into it, let herself feel safe for a moment. From the other room, they heard Sophie laugh at something in the movie, followed by Noah's giggle. They're good together, Lucas observed. They really are. Think they'd be okay with this? Us being together? Emma considered it. Noah keeps asking if you're my boyfriend. I think he'd be thrilled. Sophie's been dropping hints for months, very unsubtle hints. They stood in the kitchen holding each other while their kids watched movies, and the Seattle rain started falling outside. And for the first time in longer than Emma could remember, everything felt right. The next few months weren't easy. They kept their relationship quiet at work, professional and appropriate, but rumors started anyway. Some people were supportive, others whispered. Emma had to sit through a particularly brutal foundation meeting where a donor made a pointed comment about workplace relationships that was clearly directed at her. Lucas immediately addressed it, making it clear that Emma's work spoke for itself, and that anyone who had concerns about his judgment could take it up with him directly. The donor apologized, but it reminded Emma that this would always be complicated, that people would always question whether she'd earned her place or slept her way into it. One evening in February, almost exactly a year after she'd started at the foundation, Emma sat in Lucas's kitchen watching him cook dinner while Sophie and Noah did homework at the table. I got offered another job, she said suddenly. Lucas nearly dropped the pan he was holding. What? City of Seattle. They want me to run their entire homeless services department. It's a huge job. More money, more resources, actual political power to change policy. Emma paused. And it would mean not working for you anymore. Lucas set down the pan carefully. Do you want it? I don't know. Part of me does. It would solve a lot of problems. No more questions about whether I'm qualified. No more navigating the workplace relationship stuff. A chance to help even more people. But? Lucas asked. But I built something at the foundation, and I'd be leaving all those families I've been working with, and... Emma stopped. And? Lucas prompted gently. And I like working with you, even if we have to be careful about it, even if it's complicated. Lucas came to sit beside her at the counter. This is your decision, Emma. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I want you to choose based on what's best for you and Noah, not based on what's easiest for us. Emma looked at him. What if what's best for me is staying? Then stay. People will always say something. Lucas took her hand. The question is whether you're doing the work you want to be doing. Are you? Emma thought about the families she'd helped over the past year, the mobile outreach units that were now operating in 5 neighborhoods, the partnerships they'd built with community organizations, the lives that had genuinely changed. Yeah, she said. I am. Then that's your answer. Emma turned down the city job. Some people thought she was crazy. Others nodded knowingly, assuming it was because of Lucas. Emma stopped caring what people assumed. She had work that mattered, and a man she loved, and a son who was thriving, and that was enough. In March, almost 14 months after that first meeting on a frozen hospital bench, Lucas asked Emma to move in with him. They were lying in his bed late at night, the kids long asleep, talking about nothing important. I've been thinking, Lucas said. Your lease is up soon, right? Yeah, May 1st. And you'll have to find a new place because your landlord is selling the building? Emma sighed. Don't remind me. I've been looking, but everything affordable is either too far from Noah's school or in terrible neighborhoods. Or you could move in here. Emma's breath caught. What? Lucas propped himself up on one elbow. The kids are already together constantly. You're here most weekends anyway, and I hate watching you stress about rent when I have 7 bedrooms sitting empty. Lucas, I'm not trying to rescue you, he said quickly. I'm asking because I want you here, because Sophie wants Noah here, because this house feels like a home when you're in it and empty when you're not. Emma's throat was tight. That's a big step. I know. And if you're not ready, that's okay. But I want you to know the offer is there. No pressure, no strings. Just think about it. Emma thought about her tiny apartment with the leaky faucet and the neighbors who fought at 2 a.m. Thought about Noah sharing a bedroom with Sophie in this house where he'd have space to run and play. Thought about falling asleep next to Lucas every night instead of just sometimes. Okay, she said. Okay, you'll think about it? Okay, I'll do it. Lucas's smile could have lit up the entire city. They told the kids the next morning over breakfast. Noah and Sophie literally screamed with excitement and then spent the next hour planning how to decorate their rooms. Moving day was chaos. Emma didn't have much. A decade of poverty meant she'd learned to travel light. But what she did have felt significant as she carried it into Lucas's house. Her books on his shelves, Noah's toys mixed with Sophie's, her coffee mug next to his in the cabinet, physical proof that they were building something together. The first few weeks were an adjustment. Noah had nightmares about the move and cried for his old room. Sophie got bossy about house rules, and Emma had to gently remind her that this was Noah's home too now. Lucas worked too late, and Emma got annoyed. Emma left dishes in the sink, and Lucas got quietly frustrated. It wasn't perfect or smooth or easy. It was real, and they figured it out. By summer, they'd found their rhythm. Noah and Sophie fought like siblings and made up like best friends. Emma and Lucas learned to navigate work and home and parenting as a team. The foundation continued to grow, helping more families every month. One evening in late June, almost 18 months after that first encounter outside Memorial Medical Center, Emma sat on the back deck of the house that was now hers too, watching Noah and Sophie chase fireflies in the yard. Lucas came out and handed her a glass of wine, settling into the chair beside her. "Happy?" he asked. Emma considered the question. Happiness had always felt like something other people got, something she'd been too poor, too stressed, too broken to access. But sitting here, watching her son laugh, living in a house that actually felt like home, loved by a man who saw all her jagged edges and chose her anyway. "Yeah," she said. "I really am." Lucas took her hand. "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence as the summer evening faded into night. Emma thought about the woman she'd been 18 months ago. Desperate, scared, convinced she was alone in a world that didn't care if she survived or disappeared. She thought about the single moment that had changed everything. One stranger choosing to see her when she was invisible. She'd spent years believing that asking for help was weakness, that accepting kindness meant admitting failure, that she had to survive completely alone or she wasn't surviving at all. But she'd been wrong. Sometimes the bravest thing you could do was let someone help you. Sometimes accepting a hand up wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Sometimes the people who'd been through hell themselves were exactly the ones who knew how to pull you out of it. And sometimes a freezing January afternoon could lead to a June evening full of fireflies and laughter and the kind of happiness Emma had stopped believing existed. "Thank you," she said quietly. Lucas looked at her. "For what?" "For stopping that day. For seeing me. For not giving up on me even when I wanted to give up on myself." Lucas squeezed her hand. "You saved yourself, Emma. I just bought some medicine." "You did more than that. So did you." Lucas smiled. "You reminded me what it felt like to be human instead of just functional. You brought joy back into this house. You made me believe I could be more than just Sophie's dad who worked too much." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder. "We saved each other," she said. "Yeah," Lucas agreed. "I guess we did." Inside the house, Sophie shrieked with laughter as Noah caught a firefly. Their voices drifted out into the summer night, full of joy and innocence, and the kind of security that came from knowing you were loved. Emma closed her eyes and let herself feel it, all of it. The fear she'd survived, the loneliness she'd endured, the impossible journey from that frozen bench to this moment. She'd spent so long being invisible that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. But Lucas had seen her, really seen her, and in seeing her, he'd helped her see herself differently too. Not as a failure or a charity case or someone who didn't deserve good things, but as a mother who'd fought through hell for her son, a professional who'd built something meaningful from nothing, a woman who was worthy of love, of happiness, of a life bigger than just surviving. The foundation continued to grow over the years that followed. Emma's outreach program became a model that cities across the country started replicating. She spoke at conferences, trained other organizations, helped shape policy at the state level. Noah and Sophie grew up together, more siblings than friends, navigating school and sports and teenage drama as a unit. They learned early that family wasn't about blood or money or perfect circumstances. It was about showing up, about seeing each other, about choosing to stay even when things got hard. Emma and Lucas got married on a rainy November afternoon 3 years after they met, with just Sophie and Noah and a handful of close friends in attendance. No press, no spectacle, just two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, promising to keep finding each other every day after. And sometimes on cold January mornings, Emma would drive past Memorial Medical Center and look at the bench where her life had changed, where a stranger had sat down beside her and refused to look away from her pain. She'd think about all the invisible people still sitting on benches like that one, still choosing between medicine and rent, still drowning in a system that didn't see them. And she'd go to work and fight for them, because that was the thing about being seen when you were invisible. It didn't just change your life, it changed what you believed was possible. It changed how you saw other people. It changed everything. One small act of kindness on a freezing January afternoon. That was all it took. And Emma Carter, who'd once believed she was completely alone in the world, spent the rest of her life making sure no one else ever had to feel that way again.